Hi there, I'm Tim Zirin. Welcome back to more Conversations in the Digital Age. The Zagat Guide, now also online, with its alluring burgundy cover, has become the most trusted restaurant, leisure, and travel consultant in the world. Relying on the experience of hundreds of thousands of consumers of pleasure, as well as business diners and travelers, Zagat tells us where to dine, where to stay, where to see, and how to party. The Zagat Guide did not come into being overnight. It started in the 1970s as the hobby of two foodie lawyers. Their avocation quickly became a major brand, a multi-million-dollar business, and its meteoric growth is a testament to the acumen and marketing skills of its founders, Nina and Tim Zagat, who we are privileged to have with us today. Nina and Tim, we're delighted to have you on the program.
We're glad to be with you.
I always like to start at the beginning, and the beginning was the word. Tell us how you and Nina got started and how the Zagat Guide got started.
Well, first of all, we met at law school.
At law school?
Yale Law School.
That's very romantic, Yale Law School.
Right. We were assigned to sit next to each other, and a year and a half later, while we were still at law school, we got married. And the guide wasn't something we did for quite a few years after that. We went to France as respective law firms sent us. I was with Hughes, Hubbard, and Reed, and Nina was Sherman Sterling. And when we came back, we didn't find any reliable guide to restaurants and a lot of other things in New York.
Now, was it in France that you acquired your taste for food?
I would say I acquired my taste for food eating with Nina because she's a great cook. And so when I started out...
But I mean dining out.
Well, dining out, we did learn a lot about dining out being in Paris.
In Paris.
Yes.
And you went on a gastronomical odyssey, I would submit without fear of contradiction.
That's absolutely true. We traveled and followed the Michelin stars all over France.
Oh, my gosh. And so did you do anything like a survey of restaurants or a survey of guides when you were in Paris?
We had something called the Guide des Guides.
The Guide of Guides?
Yes.
Like the Fund of Funds?
Yes. And a bunch of friends, about 25 young lawyers, got together once a month and shared their opinions about the restaurants in Paris. And it looked a lot like what we did eventually in New York, but the difference was in New York we had hundreds of thousands of people participating. In Paris we had 25.
Only 25.
It was still better than one.
Nina, did you enjoy those years in Paris?
They were absolutely fabulous.
And those were
formative years? It was very formative and very hard to come back. But we realized at a certain point, if we didn't go back, we'd probably stay there forever.
Now, I noticed...
Which wouldn't have been so bad.
I noticed that you have this red rosette sort of above your collarbone, and I'm told that Tim has one too. That's given to you by the French government. Was that because of the time you spent in Paris or something else?
Not because of the time we spent in Paris, but because of the time we devoted to raising the profile of French restaurants and chefs around the world through the work that we did on the survey. And also because of work that we did when the French were having a difficult time here. Remember the freedom fries and that whole period.
There was a boycott of French restaurants.
When they wouldn't support us in the Iraq War, although they supported us in the American Revolution.
Yeah.
But we tried to explain that those were all Americans that were working for those restaurants.
That's right.
And to take it out against them wasn't really fair.
And for that, you get a Legion of Honor.
The combination of
It's not just a Legion. I have a thing called Chevalier, which is the lower level. She is an officier, which is a higher level.
So does that mean
I have to salute her to get out of bed?
Does that mean, of course, does that mean she can order you around?
Absolutely. She always did and always will.
She didn't need the rosette. All right, so then do you get on the Liberté to come home, or do you fly home?
The France.
On the France to come home.
Yeah.
And how was the food on the France?
It was fabulous. Not only that, at that time, you were able to bring as much wine as you wanted.
Right.
And so we went on a buying spree before we took off.
Okay, so you land on back on our shores in New York. You go through customs. They ignore the wine, and you hit the ground running. You're practicing law, both of you. So then, how do you get started with a restaurant guide?
Well,
we were members of a wine tasting group, and we would sit there tasting wines, giving our ratings for them. And at one point, Tim said, "Well, why don't we rate restaurants?"
He just said that out of the blue.
Yeah, we've got all these. We were spending all this time rating wines, but we all go out to eat all the time, and everybody was complaining about the restaurant critics, and how they didn't agree with what they said. And Tim figured everybody ate out as much as the restaurant critics did, and we all had our own tastes. And let's see what people think.
it was simply based on the idea that if you had enough people sharing their experience, it would be better and more accurate than one person could ever be.
Okay, so let's take the New York Times. They had Mimi Sheraton probably in those days. And
yes, they did.
And Mimi Sheraton used to wear disguises, but all the restaurant owners knew her when she came. And how many times did she visit a restaurant usually?
Usually 3 or 4 times.
Same restaurant. They
But
saw her
she was
coming.
one person who was going at one time of year, and no single person can cover the thousands of restaurants that we have in New York. We cover about 2,500 restaurants a year. One critic could go only once for lunch, once for dinner, 5 days a week, and cover 500 restaurants once each during the course of a year. Obviously, having thousands of surveyors or thousands of critics, you cover the territory much more thoroughly.
But these aren't professional critics. I mean, these are just people who like to go out at night.
Yeah, but they are people who eat out all the time, and who says that the critic has a PhD in taste buds? In fact, I think if you really look at what the individual critics say, you find that you disagree with them just as often as you disagree with your first cousin.
Okay, so you develop a questionnaire, don't you? Okay, so you have this mimeographed questionnaire, and you have it in your hand. How many did you start with, 50 questionnaires?
No, we started with several hundred, and we went from there in the second year to 500, and the third year to 1,000. At that point, Nina said, this is getting to be too expensive because we had to also data process everything. And so she said, let's try to sell it. And the first year we sold about 7,000, and the second year more. And the third year we were covered by New York Magazine in a front page cover story. And we jumped from doing about 15,000 copies a year to 75,000 a month in 1 month.
Okay, so let's
But
back
that
up for a
wasn't
moment.
originally
Yeah.
the plan, because we had thought that we could find a publisher to publish our guide.
Oh, you didn't want to do that.
Well, in
at the
retrospect,
time,
we
it
didn't.
seemed
But
like a good idea.
at the time, we were busy practicing law, and we thought, you know, this is going to take time. And so through our law firms, we got to see all the major publishers in New York, and they all turned us down.
I had 2.
Stupid them and lucky for you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Let's just
I
back
had
up.
2 of those publishers reporting to me at my job at the time. And when you get turned down by people who report to you, you know you have a problem.
Well, that's like the guy who never went to college who becomes a captain of industry and he has PhDs reporting to him.
That's right.
But let's back up to the mimeograph sheets because they fascinate me. So you have a couple of hundred of mimeograph sheets, but where do you find the surveyors? And you just go out on the street the way they find jurors and the way they did in the 16th century?
We went to lawyers and investment bankers and all kinds of people who we knew eat out a lot. And they were basically eating out as a way of life. So if we went to all...
They had expense accounts.
They all had expense accounts, yes.
So, all right, so then you hand out here's a questionnaire, fill it out. But you went beyond that, because I have on very good authority, namely my wife, that you went to
Your wife
Harvard.
is one of the best authorities I can think of.
You were at a Harvard-Yale game. She saw you there, and you were passing out questionnaires.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
we did
passed
it
them out
everywhere.
everywhere I could.
Everywhere you could. Okay, so
Right.
we're passing out these questionnaires. They complete the questionnaires, and then they come back to you. Now, at that point, are you editing the results yourselves?
Well,
No,
first you have to
first
data
have a
process.
data processing, and then we got the results of the data processing back, and we edited it. And everybody who participated in the survey got a free copy of the resulting book.
And you published the book.
Yes.
So where did you get the pithy quotes from? I mean, they don't run through every single questionnaire.
No, but if you have enough people and you tell them to try to be funny, you get a lot of very funny comments.
Okay, so what one man's noisy restaurant is another man's a woman's lively restaurant. I mean, how do you thread the needle?
You say some people think this is crowded, and other people think it's too formal and quiet.
Trendy.
But there really are ways to show the difference of opinion. But it's very important to have a difference of opinion, because an individual critic cannot really distinguish the noisy from the quiet. But if you have enough people, and some say it's noisy and some say it's quiet, that's useful to say.
Now, you're both lawyers. Does any of this implicate the libel laws? I mean, suppose somebody came back and said there are cockroaches here or there are rats. Or it's filthy.
I have a good story about that.
Oh, God, tell me.
I was trying to get an endorsement from James Beard, who had said he liked our book, and I went down to see him in his home in Greenwich Village, and he said, "I'm sorry, I only endorse things that I get paid." And I said, "Oh, well, okay." And he said, "But on the other hand, I want to give you some advice, and I feel a little strange about it because you're a lawyer." And I said, "What's the advice?" "Don't say anything about finding rodents or roaches in a restaurant, because the day that they sue you, there will be no rodents or roaches in the restaurant." He said, "That's what my lawyers told me." So
you'll never be able to prove it.
Well, we have a lot of ways of talking about it that says it's not quite pristine, or other ways that suggest that it's got a problem in terms of cleanliness.
So you said the things that move on the floor are not necessarily human beings.
But
you avoided that. But nonetheless, I mean, you do pan restaurants.
Oh yeah,
and under the libel laws, in a restaurant guide or a critic, they're free to venture all sorts of
opinions.
It's opinion.
We never were successfully sued. We were sued a couple of times, but never more than just being thrown out on a motion. But some of the things people said, which we got, and I always get a kick out of, this restaurant suffers from delusions of adequacy. The advantage of this restaurant is it saves fuel bills. The heartburn will keep you warm all winter. And it goes on and on and on like that. And
next week they're out of business.
Well, one of the ones that we used, because the women and the women editors told us it was okay, and I thought it was a little bit risque. Nina's kicking me under the table right now, but the review was, if this place doesn't get you laid, nothing will. And it was a restaurant that still exists, and a very prominent one. And we got hundreds of nasty letters from people all over the place who read it and didn't like it. But the angriest letter we got was from a man who said we hadn't lived up to our representations.
And he's one of your editors today. Yeah. Now, do you edit any of your own pithy comments, or do you critique restaurants yourselves? Or?
Never.
No. So
we edited for many years. We edited the other people's comments, but our goal was to say as nearly as we could what the large numbers of people were saying.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd never edit somebody's quote.
Never edit somebody's quote.
No.
Now, how do you police possible conflicts of interest? I mean, suppose I have a big position in a new French restaurant, and I happened to get hold of a questionnaire, and I fill it out, and I said, this is the best restaurant that there's ever been in New York. How do you edit that out?
We have a variety of ways to do that. One, if you're
I'm a silent partner. How do you know?
If your rating is out of line with everybody else's, with the average rating, that's an issue, and you can be pulled for that reason. Secondly, if you are saying things that basically are not consistent with what everybody else is saying, it is likely to get dropped on the cutting room floor.
Okay, so
you see that people go one way or another. You don't your little vote sitting out here and everybody else saying something else. You wouldn't have much of an impact.
The most significant restaurants in New York have over 1,000 people voting a year. So one person really doesn't make much difference.
Okay, so then you compile all these returns that you get. I mean, it's almost like being a commissioner of elections. Mm-hmm. And you compile all the returns. And do you have a rating system of some kind? I mean, how do you rate restaurants? Nina, you're good at rating.
Well, they're separately rated for food, decor, service, and we always indicate the cost. So whether it's expensive or not expensive.
And so do you do it on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is the best restaurant?
No, 0 to 30.
0 to 30.
And so 30 is perfection. No restaurant has ever gotten 30 for anything. And 0 is rotten, and no restaurant has gotten that for anything.
But now the rating is 0 to 5.
Now it's recently been changed.
Yes.
Yes.
But 30 worked for a long time.
Yeah.
So you have the rating system down. You have your restaurant guide. Are you of the view that a restaurant guide is more informative to the consuming public than an article by Mimi Sheraton in the New York Times?
Yes.
Well,
the answer is yes.
Yes, but it's also a different perspective. Where we originally started looking at this, when we originally started looking at this problem, we realized that we'd clip things out of the newspapers too. But when it came to 5 o'clock, you're a young lawyer, your friends are calling up and saying, let's meet for dinner tonight. What are you going to do? Start rustling through all your pieces of paper? It's not useful. So we felt that if we had all the information organized in a very clear way, so that you could look down a list and see, well, this place gets really high food ratings and is really cheap. That sounds perfect for our dinner tonight.
Okay, now.
But I would like to add to that. Nina is, I think, correct in what she's saying, but simply having hundreds or thousands of people saying what they think is inherently more likely to be accurate than any single person can ever be.
But you were really, if I may say so, visionaries, because long before the internet, this is a form of crowdsourcing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yep.
So
that's before anybody knew what crowdsourcing was.
Well, you didn't know either. Except you knew it was good. So this is good.
We just thought having a lot of our friends getting together and sharing their opinions was likely to give us good results.
Good. Well, I mentioned the internet because suddenly, I don't know, around the turn of the millennium, a new player enters the field, which is the internet. And while you say the downside of a review in the New York Times is I've got to go hunting through clippings to find the review, I can find it quite easily on the internet using Google or some other search engine. And so there's some competition for you, isn't there?
There is, although we don't consider it competition. We never have. We do what we can as well as we can. And interestingly, Google, which could have done it on its own and was trying, decided to buy us because they thought we were more accurate than anything else that they were aware of.
Well, we'll get to that, and it seems an obvious choice for Google. But when the internet came into play, did you find that Zagat had to go online as well?
We did, right away.
Right away. And what did that do for you?
We launched our first website in May of '99, and it revolutionized our business.
Even before the turn of the millennium.
That's right.
And we got paid for every subscriber, and we also had an app that did the same thing for cell phones.
So did that undercut the sales of the guide?
Not really. No, surprisingly not.
I mean, I can carry it around in a smartphone. Why do I need a guide?
But when we started out in that period, we wanted to be sure that we were paid on every platform, so that we had subscriptions for Zagat.com. We'd license content to all the different telecoms and other businesses. They'd pay us. Books we got paid for, and even though the prices were not the same on every platform, the fundamental principle was this is valuable content and we expect to be paid for it.
So you were a lot smarter. You were a lot smarter businesswoman than Sulzberger at the New York Times, who gave it all away.
Well, we got paid by everybody, and frankly, there are a lot of people who still like to read books, and who say that they prefer to read our content in book form over the internet.
The tactile sensation.
That, and also, in some ways, easier to look things up in our books.
Let's get into some of the categories. I mean, you have pizza, you have sushi, you have drink after work, you have romantic soft lights, you have every category of restaurant imaginable. That's very useful to the consumer.
We think so, and anytime people suggested another area, we did it. I mean, you were talking about noisy. We couldn't deal with noise for a while until we thought quiet conversation. A restaurant that is quiet all evening. A restaurant that's noisy may be quiet at 7 o'clock, noisy at 9 o'clock, and quiet again at 10 o'clock. So we couldn't deal with it except turning it around. But there's almost no possible area of use that we don't try to cover.
Do you have a category, places to go to be seen?
Yes.
Places to go not to be seen?
No.
No? Why not?
I don't know.
Is that libelous?
We never got. If you
didn't suggest it.
If you had suggested it to us, we might have done it.
Might have done it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you start branching off in all sorts of fantastic ways. You go into other countries, England, France, China even. I mean, how do you find people to answer questionnaires in China?
Same way in New York. We would go to, first we hire people in the individual city, and then we ask them to contact law firms, accounting firms, ad agencies, banks, same kinds of people that participated at the outset of our survey in New York.
Did you translate the questionnaire into Mandarin?
Yeah.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
And so you actually followed the business model that had succeeded in New York?
We did it in 5 cities in Japan, and in Japanese I couldn't read a word we said.
Then you branch off using the same business model into all sorts of other areas, movies, theaters.
Golf courses?
Golf courses. You divide those into tough golf courses, scenic golf courses. Golf courses to be seen and not to be seen.
All the best. If you're a golfer, I'll get you a golf guide. But we covered shopping, nightlife, landmarks, family travel, a whole variety of things that people had interests in and were enthusiastic about it. So anytime you have a group of people who really like golf, you get very good answers and high participation. The golf guide, we had the average person, and we had about 10,000 people a year participating, covered 25 golf courses a year.
25 golf courses
That means they were covering two golf courses a month.
Then you quit the law. You're devoting yourselves entirely to this wonderful business you've developed. You have time for 2 sons.
Right.
Raised them to maturity. They went to college. They're very successful. It's an amazing story. And then comes the exit. You sell to Google. How did that happen?
That was not an exit.
You're still doing it.
We're still doing it.
You're still doing it. Well, you don't want to give that up. That probably put that right up front in the contract.
Well, they wanted us to stay on to keep an eye on the business and make sure that we were doing things consistently with what we'd been doing before.
As reported that you sold it for $125 million.
No, it was reportedly more than that.
It was reportedly more than that. So I saw $125 million. That's not accurate.
Saw the wrong
wrong
newspaper.
figure, wrong newspaper. They understated it. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question for you. Nina and Tim Zagat, really, it's marvelous.
You know, it's incredible. You pronounce our name correctly. That's because we're old friends.
Full disclosure.
Everybody calls us Zagat.
All right, well, I'm going to pronounce it correctly the way it should be pronounced. Nina and Tim Zagat, you've been married over 50 years, right?
Right.
2 sons.
Right.
Built up a multi-million-dollar business.
Right.
Sold to Google for some number that no one even knows is what's accurate. You made a multi-million-dollar enterprise out of a hobby. Your relationship is a 30 in anyone's book.
Thank you.
What's the secret of your success?
The secret of the success is having Nina as a wife.
Oh. God, he's a chevalier.
I would say the secret is that we both did this as a labor of love. And it started as a hobby. And even when we got turned down by the publishers, we knew we wanted to continue. We gave it effort that might not have occurred if we were not doing it as a labor of love.
Nina, would you say that it's having Tim as a husband?
I think that's great.
That's great.
I think it's doing something you love and doing it with somebody you love. That's great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for coming by. This has been a perfectly marvelous interview. I never had more fun in my life. Thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more conversations in the digital age. I'm Jim Zirin. All the best and take care.